Rose Ewing, and I am the community educator for Hopeful Horizons. I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our first virtual Take Back the Night. It's an event to show support for survivors and to give those who are ready to put an end to all sexual assault, all violence, and all abuse in our community a chance to speak out and say, stop. We will not allow this violence and abuse in our community to continue. Hopeful Horizons holds Take Back the Night during the month of April to recognize the month as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, because we cannot begin to address and stop sexual violence in our communities if we do not first recognize it as a problem. Take Back the Night is a worldwide movement where marches, vigils, rallies are held in more than 30 countries annually with the mission of ending sexual, relationship, domestic abuse, and all types of violence in all forms. So in the next 45 minutes, let's come together and say, time is up on allowing violence to destroy our communities. To learn more about Take Back the Night, here is a message from 14th Circuit Solicitor Duffy Stone.
The first Take Back the Night march started in 1975 in Philadelphia after the murder of a young woman microbiologist named Susan Alexander Spieth. Spieth was stabbed a mere block from her home while walking home at night by a stranger. Across the ocean, about the time of Spieth's death, 13 women were murdered in a span of months in the back alleys of Leeds, York, Bristol, Manchester, Newcastle, Brighton, and London. To memorialize them, torchlit marches were held across the country on November the 12th, 1977. These marches began a movement. Similar events sprang up in Belgium, Italy, Australia, India, and across our country from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. In many places, the marches continue to this day. They're held in colleges and churches and courthouses, on streets, and even in the tents of troops stationed overseas. Take Back the Night events are rallies against violence. We stand up. We speak out against crimes, particularly those against women, sexual assault, domestic violence, murder. But it's more than taking a stand against crime. After the 13 women were murdered across England, police told women not to go out at night, effectively putting them under curfew. In many ways, that curfew exists today. It exists when a domestic violence survivor is asked, "Why don't you just leave?" It exists when a sexual assault victim is asked, "What were you wearing? Why were you there?" Or, "Why were you out at night?" Take Back the Night is not just to stand against violence. It's about taking back what belongs to us, our freedom. It is about the freedom to walk our streets even at night and to be free from the fear of being beaten, molested, or harassed. In November of 2017, the Solicitor's Office started a special victim unit dedicated to the prosecution of sexual assault, domestic violence, child and elder abuse. And while this has been successful, it wasn't enough. A year later, we opened the Victim Services Center, because instead of blaming survivors, we must empower them. That is why Hopeful Horizons is so important. They and other center partners, including Low Country Legal Volunteers, CAPA, and the Low Country Alliance for a Healthy Youth, support victims throughout Beaufort, Jasper, Colleton, Hampton, and Allendale counties. They do so not only through their cooperation with the center, but also with events like Take Back the Night. Take Back the Night is a defiant, rebellious, empowering rally where we stand in unity as a community and say no. We will not tolerate crimes on our streets or in our homes. We will not tolerate crimes against women or men, children or the elderly. We will not tolerate crime in the light of day or in the dark of night. And we will not let criminals take away our freedom.
Thank you, Solicitor Stone. I'd now like to introduce South Carolina Senator Margie Bright Matthews, who would like to say a few words to us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Hopeful Horizon, for sponsoring Take Back the Night. The statistics on sexual assault are stunning to all of us, especially here in the Low Country. Once every 73 seconds, an American is sexually abused. 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused. Children to whom those crimes are perpetrated, they're done before their 18th birthday. This is horrendous. Nearly 1 in every 5 women and 1 in 67 men has been raped at some time in their life. The work of Hopeful Horizons is a model for the state of South Carolina in this multidisciplinary, community-based approach to addressing not only abuse, but sexual abuse. We are working hard at the State House to support your good work through a number of bills I'm sponsoring with other advocates for survivors, such as those you protect. The Address Confidentiality Program for those who've experienced domestic violence, human trafficking, stalking, or sexual offenses, and another bill for victim assistance organizations to maintain confidentiality is crucial. There are too many ways that offenders can locate their victims and continue to perpetrate their crime. Increasing the penalties for sex buyers. South Carolina is the 4th lowest in the nation in the fines we assess. We've got to do more. Implementing more oversight for massage parlors to protect the employees of those establishments. Until we do that, sex trafficking continues. Think about it. Establishing a statewide child abuse protocol so that every child's case is handled using best practices. As again, Hopeful Horizon leads the charge. They're the model. Sexual abuse is one of those topics that we want to turn away from. It breaks our heart. It hurts us to even think about it, but it exists. It exists over and over, generationally in some families. It exists in the Low Country. The statistics are too high, but we must turn toward it instead of ignoring it and pretending it does not exist. Hopeful Horizons and Observing Sexual Assault Awareness Month helps us to look fully at this epidemic, not only nationally or statewide, but more particularly here in the 5 areas that I represent, and work together to help heal and support survivors. That is the only way we will make these victims victorious. Thank you for all you do, Hopeful Horizons, and together we can.
Thank you, Senator Bright Matthews. Thank you very much for being here. I'd now like to introduce the Beaufort County Sheriff, PJ Tanner. He's joining us live tonight. Sheriff Tanner, thank you so much for being here.
Rose, my pleasure. Hopefully you can hear me. I just want to check and make sure.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean, you can't say enough about Take Back the Night and Hopeful Horizons for all the good things that Hopeful Horizons have done for Beaufort County and throughout the 14th Circuit. You know, I think the solicitor gave a good history of you know, of course, Hopeful Horizons, Take Back the Night, and leading up to where we are today. And I applaud the senator for giving us a little information about what we're going to do in the General Assembly to make our laws a little bit stronger and have a little more teeth in the law itself. You know, I've been doing this job a long time, 40 years. I've been in law enforcement for that long, and I've been fortunate enough to be the sheriff of Beaufort County for 22. And the thing that I guess that bothers me every year when we come into the month of April is that we have this continuous conversation about abuse, sexual assault, elder abuse, you know, domestic violence, and all the other things that we routinely see throughout the day, the month, and the year. And I'm encouraged by the solicitor's comments and the senator's comments, because it appears that we all are in this challenge together. And without the partnerships that we have collectively and the fine work that Hopeful Horizons has done over the years, I honestly know that that we can make a difference. You know, this past year, 2020, through several challenges at all of us. It threw challenges at law enforcement. It threw challenges to the General Assembly. It threw challenges to our courts. And it's not helping things that that basically our courts were shut down for a year, and our cases were backlogged because of the inability to have a court hearing, or in some cases bond hearings, in other cases to have trials on pending cases that we currently have on the books. You know, there is a level of trust and confidence that our victims need to have in the efforts that we put forward and the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. And I know that there are times where victims question our ability to successfully not only investigate a case, but have that case come to conclusion, and from that point end up in a courtroom and hopefully have a guilty verdict and a sentence, and that perpetrator is taken out of society to never convict or commit that crime again. And when we look at the job of law enforcement, and when we're interviewing and talking with our victims and responding to those calls for service, those are the questions that we can't answer. We can hopefully provide enough level of confidence to ensure that the victim cooperates with the investigation and has the confidence in that investigation that eventually that case will go to court and the person responsible for that crime will be appropriately adjudicated. And I feel sure that that is the case, but it doesn't slow the tide on a number of cases that we see from year to year. I'm encouraged on one hand that when I look at the stats for Beaufort County from 2018, I'm encouraged that 2019 were lower. And when I look at the stats for 2020, which is a COVID year, I see the stats for for 2020 during a COVID year, half of what they were in 2018. Two things come to mind. Either these cases are not being reported or they have not been reported as of yet. COVID 2020 was a difficult challenge for everyone. A lot of people were out of work. A lot of businesses were closed. A lot of education was done at home. A lot of Zoom meetings were done by everyone. And colleges, for the most part, shut down and people were working from home. When I see a number that low, and I look at our investigators and I look at the caseloads that we have and the type cases that we've investigated over the past 3 years, I have to question that number, especially the forcible rapes being as low as 20 reported in 2020 and as many as 43 in 2018. Again, it's half of what it was in 2018. I'm hoping that that's not because they weren't reported. And often we do find that that is the reason. And I would hope that, again, our victims of any type of abuse have the confidence in their law enforcement, their prosecutor's office, and our court system to bring these cases forward and allow that case to be investigated thoroughly. And hopefully the suspect will be identified and held accountable for their actions. I think 2021 is going to be another year for us. We have other challenges that are before us. We're more conscious this year of human trafficking and the elements of human trafficking and the results thereof because of what's going on at our border currently. So we're keeping a very, very close eye on any action and actions in that area. But I just want to extend another thank you to Hopeful Horizons and everyone that's participated and historically participated and will continue to participate and Take Back Tonight. I think it's an awesome program. I think Hopeful Horizon has done a fantastic job. We are here. We're here to support you. We're here to provide the services to our citizens. We hope that the confidence is there to do so. And if there's anything that we could do or should do differently, then we look forward to any of those changes that will benefit our citizens and our community. And Rose, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to be before you.
Thank you, Sheriff Tanner. Thank you for being here tonight. Tonight is truly about survivors, and we have several survivors with us tonight who would like to share some of their experiences. These individuals have overcome the trauma that comes from violence, and we are very grateful for their bravery. So I'd like to call on the first survivor for tonight, Margie.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. And do I start my video or do I just leave it on the sound?
You can start your video.
Okay. Okay. So I just kind of talk about my experience and go from there.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Margie, and just to kind of start off, I do have my positivity board in the background where I kind of got that through therapy, which really helped me. And I really appreciate everything that's been said so far. And I think an issue that I came across is that I didn't acknowledge that it was the abuser's fault. I thought it was my own fault, even though I was 6 years old. So being a 6-year-old and being molested was something that I didn't actually come out and say until recently. And it was so hard to say it. But to get over that, to be able to actually bring awareness for myself, I love to be able to express it. It's almost like the scariest thing that I've ever done. It really was. But the healing that I've come across, and it's a process that I've been doing, finding out that I was actually self-harming myself. I'd scratch my head and, nobody could see it, so it wasn't an issue. But it is an issue because I was hurting myself. So when I acknowledged what happened to myself and got therapy, then I got that help too, because I realized that it wasn't my fault, what happened, and learning that helped me heal, and I'm better than ever. I'm successful, and I'm actually graduating college in a couple of days, so everything has gotten a lot better for me. And that's mainly because I did therapy.
Thank you for sharing your story, Margie, and congratulations about college. That's a big accomplishment. The next survivor is Shannon. Shannon, would you like to share your story?
Can y'all see me?
Yes.
Okay, so some of you might know me. I actually used to work for Hopeful Horizons a couple of years ago, but my name is Shannon, and I will share a little bit about my story and overcoming my story. And I've wrote it down, so y'all bear with me. Growing up, my life was not all happy and safe or childlike. I was a victim of many things. My dad was murdered when I was 3 years old, and my stepdad began sexually assaulting me and raped me beginning at the age of 8. It lasted till I was about 11 or 12. I've kind of block those years out, so I don't have exact age or dates for that. I'm also a victim of child abuse, and I witnessed a lot of IPV, which is intimate partner violence, in my house growing up. I would watch my stepdad choke my mom. He would come home and beat on my brother and I. You know, just lots and lots of violence in my house. He was a scary man, as most can relate. He would threaten me and threaten to kill my family if I ever said anything. So of course I never said anything. It wasn't till I was 12 or 13, I think, when I woke up one morning and knew that I was going to be left alone. And I knew that if I was left alone with him that day, that he was going to rape me again. So I had left my mom a note where she got ready for work. And I told her at least about one incident that had happened. And that was the day that we had left. Unfortunately, the horrific encounters with him did not end. Unknowns to me, my mom was very scared of him and afraid of leaving and didn't know how to leave. We were separated by households, but they were still together. So I still saw him. The sexual assaults would stop at this time, but the violence only got worse. This lasted about 3 more years for us. So I know you're all asking, was my assault ever reported? And unfortunately, it was not. I come from a small town. And like I said, my mom was very afraid of him, but not only of him, but was afraid that my name would get dragged through the mud. And no one would believe me and those sorts of things. She does truly regret that decision now. Following that, my teenage years were rebellious and filled with suicide attempts, drugs, other behaviors that I'm not proud of. But at the age of 19, I did get married. And I thought, okay, at this time I could probably put the past behind me and move on. But unfortunately, that didn't work. I was always angry and depressed. So at the age of 30, I had a mental breakdown and finally sought a therapist. And it was then that I was able to get the help that I'd always needed. I was able to forgive those that hurt me, and I was able to accept that I would never forget what happened to me. Also, at the age of 30, I no longer saw myself as a victim, but now I could say that I was and always will be a survivor. I've been married now for 20 years with a beautiful family, and I actually work as a victim advocate for our local sheriff's department. And it is through my career now that I want to validate victims of sexual assault, DV, and other crimes, and allow them the opportunity to be heard and to seek justice. And I just want to encourage others that's here tonight, or others that may see this, that seek help if you need it. It doesn't mean that you're weak if you need help. Own your story, because it's not what defines you, but it's what strengthens you to be who you are today. And tell your story, because not only will it continue to empower you, but it could also empower others. And it's through Hopeful Horizons that I was encouraged to tell my story for the first time about 2 years ago in 2019. So I will always be thankful for Hopeful Horizons and my time there and the people that have encouraged me. And I thank you, Rosie, for allowing me to speak tonight and tell my story. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you very much. Now we would like to hear from survivor Talitha. Talitha?
Oh, there I am. Hi. Thank you to Hopeful Horizons for letting me be here tonight. You are always available, whatever I need. You can't run from me are some of the scariest words a person can hear, especially from an abuser. They send you into a constant state of fear and helplessness. I heard those words the night before my 20th birthday. I say that common sense didn't serve me well in that relationship because I was so desperate to be loved that even though he assaulted me over and over, I needed him. And I was brainwashed to think that if I changed, he would stop hurting me. I say assaulted or hurt because I still can't say the R word. I was also assaulted when I was 14. It was my first kiss, and I told him that, hoping he wouldn't try to kiss me. But the last time he hurt me, he said, "You're going to kiss me." I had to make up all kinds of excuses to temper him hurting me, that I was gay, that if he put it in my mouth, I would accidentally bite it, etc. I could never succeed in counseling because I felt like I didn't deserve to get better. One counselor even told me, "But you went back," and that was a stake in my heart. My PTSD is so bad that I am legally declared disabled. It has stolen so much from me: a restful night's sleep, a whole week without feeling suicidal, basic energy that every well person has. But you are strong, you are worthy, and you are beautiful. You have strength, worth, and beauty because you are you. You are somebody, no matter how your attackers, abusers, or anyone has made you feel. You also have strength, worth, and beauty because you are here to support yourself, support someone else, or discover for yourself how to take back the night. What I encourage and implore you, sister, brother, take back your night. Mother, father, take back your night. Son, daughter, take back your night. Everyone under the sound of my voice, you have the power to take back your night. And if you ever feel powerless again, please know that we here would never let you fall. Hopeful Horizons and your sisters and brothers will never let you forget your power. We will never let you shrink back from the strong tower and beautiful flower that you are. Just reach out. Please, I beg of you to reach out, yell, scream, cry out if you need to. Someone is always there for you, and it has been proven over and over again. There are beautiful tomorrows in store for you. The worst is over, and you have made it. You fought hard for that survivor badge, and I salute you. Hopeful Horizons salutes you too. If you ever need them, their number is 843-770-1070. Go in hope and know that I love each and every one of you. Good night.
Thank you, Talitha. Thank you for sharing your story. The next survivor that we would like to hear from is Tama.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, good evening. My name is Tama Rivers, and I want to thank you, Hopeful Horizon, for having me here with you. I want to share my story with you. I grew up here in Beaufort, South Carolina, in a home with my mother, my father, and my younger sister. On the outside, we looked like a typical family, but inside we were far from being typical. My father completed high school and my mother was a middle school dropout. She got pregnant when she was 14 and she had me when she was 15. I was sexually abused by 2 older cousins. Both, they knew when my parents weren't around. They would always come around when my parents weren't there. The sexual assault started when I was 16 up until the age of 13. My father was an alcoholic and a very abusive man to my mother, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I watched my father beat my mother countless times. I did my best to try and help. My parents weren't aware of the impact that they had embedded into my mind as a young girl. I was taught by my father that this is how a man is supposed to treat a woman. And my mother taught me that this is how a woman is supposed to allow a man to treat her. By the time I was 13, my parents got divorced. At 15, I experienced drinking to reduce my own internal pain. I was suppressing all of this from the sexual abuse. At 16, I had my first boyfriend, and he was everything that my father was. Very abusive and jealous. I was lost, no self-esteem, no self-worth, no self-value. I didn't have any direction in life. By the time I was 23, my life started spinning downhill quickly. I was experiencing more drugs, more alcohol. I traded in the marijuana for cocaine. I started snorting cocaine. That became my way of suppressing all those emotions that were coming up inside. During this time, I met my boyfriend, who's the father of my son. This was my second abusive relationship. I would receive black eyes. I would be abused mentally, physically, emotionally on a daily basis. This boyfriend was a narcissist. Narcissists are people with a personality disorder. A Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. One day he's this way, charming and caring, and the next day he's someone else. During my 6 years of relationship with him, I got pregnant with my son. This boyfriend got indicted into federal case for drug trafficking, and I got to conspire with a drug conspiracy with him. I spent 6 years in federal prison in Coleman, Florida. During this time in prison, I think it was life-changing for me. I got counseling for the first time in my life. I didn't even know I needed counseling. Abuse was just a way of my life. I grew up in a house with violence and abuse all the time. It was just my normal. I didn't even know I needed it. I received a relationship with Jesus Christ, and this changed my life. I made better choices for myself while I was in prison. I took back my power. I took back my life. I wanted to know who I was, what was my purpose in this world, and my relationship with Christ helped me to open up that. When I got out of prison, I went to TCL and I received my associate's degree there. From TCL, I went to Park University on the air station in Beaufort, and I received my bachelor's degree in business management. Now I'm the owner of the appliance store that I came to work when I came out of prison. I'm now the owner of Recondition Appliances. I've been here now for 4 years. I'm in school now for my master's degree. I mentor young girls and women who are similar to me. Their lives looks just like mine. And I just want to come in and encourage them and show them that there's a better way and that help is there. A lot of these young girls, they remind me so much of myself. They've been inside of a home with violence that's normal for them. And so having someone that they can confide in and trust in, it's really been a huge blessing, I think, for the both of us to see someone else where my life, what I went through, it was not just only for myself, but it was for a testimony for someone else's life, to see that I went through it, and because I went through it and I survived, I thrive. I'm thriving, and that you can too. And my life's a living testimony for any young woman, any man. You can survive this, and you too can come out as a thriver, and get the help that you need. I didn't know anything about an organization like Hopeful Horizon. And now that you do, I encourage you to take heed and take that to help yourself, because the healing, everything starts with you, and to have a better life and a successful life, the life that God wants you to have. Again, I thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamar, for sharing that powerful story. Now we would like to hear from survivor Meredith.
Hello. How are y'all? I would like to thank all the other ladies for sharing. I really enjoyed hearing about your journeys. It's just a reminder that no two paths and no two journeys looks the same. And it just reminds me that recovery and healing is rarely painless. It can hurt a lot of times. And I just want to say thank you all for sharing. So I'll dive in, but basically I'm a front desk advocate for Hopeful Horizons. I'm from Walterboro, big old Walterboro. And when I was 15, I actually became a cystic. That is when I first came into the life of being a sexual abuse survivor. I actually had an interview back when we were Hope Haven. And it was also when I learned about the powers of grooming, and how an adult or an older person can take advantage of younger kids, or in my case, I was an adolescent. And it was a family friend. And I also got to learn about slut shaming after it came out. I was one of the few victims that actually got to see some justice. My abuser did go to jail. And I can take some solace in that, but in reality, it reminds me, the painful reminder, that no time, no crime is actual justice when it comes as a victim, because it's something that I have to live for the rest of my life. And so, but I applaud all the people that were able to help me as a child, the justice system, the advocates there at Hope Haven at the time, Hopeful Horizons. So let me just refer to my notes, because I can rant. I'm known to rant. So my first brush-in with when I was 15, I got the talk when it came pertaining to sexual assault, but in reality, like most kids or most teens, my idea of sexual abuse came from Law and Order. And it really, as I love Stabler and Benson, but it does a disservice when talking or getting to know about the nuances of abuse and how pervasive and deep that trauma can run. And just like I said, no two paths or no two journeys looks the same. So does healing. You can be 10 years down the line, still suffering greatly from abuse, to, lifetimes. Some women can't even talk about it, which why sharing these stories are so beneficial. I love talking about what I went through, because not only is it therapeutic, I get the touch. I can touch another victim in the room who I won't even know is a victim. 1 in 4, so many of us have friends that we don't even know are part of this community of survivors. And I want to say about Take Back the Night, I want to say how I took back my life. I was able to talk, get therapy, and power through it, work out all the baggage that came with my abuse. Being a young teenager who hadn't even kissed a boy when it happened, and being slut shamed and bullied, and for having the audacity to speak and to own my truth, that was traumatizing for me. And I think that speaks volumes about how victims are constantly re-traumatized, sometimes by the system, sometimes by our own families, sometimes by friends. Society in general does a disservice to most victims, if not all. I want to say this, whether it be sexual abuse, domestic violence, murder, any type of violence, be fierce, unapologetically fierce when it comes to your advocacy. Don't be afraid to ruin Thanksgiving dinner over the mashed potatoes when it comes to advocating for ending violence. I think, especially in this climate, that's something that we really need to hold on to. And when it comes to advocacy, the fabric of every cause is passion, united by the thread of purpose and woven by drive and motivation. And as a survivor, yes, sometimes it can be very triggering, but I can get up, make my long drive to Walterboro or to Beaufort, and knowing it feels so good to know that I can help someone, whether it be my smile in the lobby, or just knowing that everything is going to be okay, which is why I speak now, speak every moment I can get to run my mouth, I will. And just like how my mother, that dashing woman earlier, Senator Wright Matthews is my mom, or mama, how I say. What she does, which is why I'm so proud of her, is in being one of very few women, unfortunately, very few, in our General Assembly, is to actually give us a voice. Because we all know that we exist in a patriarchy, but those small acts, and sometimes large acts, breaks down this climate which benefits the abusers. So have the audacity to live your truth. Be strong, and everything will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Would anyone else like to share their story tonight? Anyone want to raise a hand? Okay. Well, that story, Meredith's story, Margie, Shannon, Talitha's, Tama's, they were all very powerful. I'd like to thank the brave survivors for speaking out and battling back against violence. They are survivors and thrivers, and tonight we honor them. for their bravery and say we believe them and all survivors. So how can you support survivors? Hopeful Horizons violence prevention specialist Raven Fields is going to give us some pointers on how we can do that.
One thing that we can do to stop sexual assault before it happens is understanding what victim blaming is and how harmful it is to individuals. Making comments or asking questions about the victim's behavior before assault happened, what they were wearing, asking why they were in that position in the first place. These things are known as victim blaming because it doesn't matter what a person is wearing, how they were acting. If they say no, then it's no. If they say yes and it turns into a no, then that's still a no. So for example, when you make it seem like just because someone has just been harassed or they weren't touched or physically penetrated that it wasn't a huge deal, it doesn't matter. Again, if it's on the spectrum of assault, then they have a right to feel some type of way about it. They have a right to voice their opinions, and their story definitely matters. Way too many times our society likes to paint the picture as if when a victim is sexually assaulted, that is something that they did, that it's their fault, that it could have been prevented, it could have been avoided in some way if they would have took some sort of different steps or made some sort of precautionary actions. But at the end of the day, that type of language shifts the blame from the perpetrator to the victim. And at the end of the day, it is the perpetrator who is committing a crime and who is doing something that is harmful and violent towards someone else. So we should never blame the victim at all under any circumstance. We need to get comfortable with holding the abusers and the perpetrators completely accountable for their actions. And it doesn't stop there. There are things that we can do to prevent it from happening altogether. We just have to be willing to put forward the effort and try. So obviously this means that our efforts for changing and ending the culture of sexual violence ends with just trying to change the abusers. We have to do way more than that. We have to hold them accountable, and we have to hold ourselves accountable as well. We must learn to improve expectations with the way we interact with each other, the way we treat each other, the way we speak to each other, and the type of jokes that we make when we're speaking and referring to another person. We must work together to strengthen policies that not only support survivors, but promote safety and strengthen our community as a whole as well. We all have a right to safety in our daily lives. We all have the right to have our boundaries respected and also likewise make choices for what we want and don't want to happen with our bodies. Whether it's at home, at school, at the workplace, when you're out at the grocery store, or when you're even getting out of your car. And when it's so easy for someone to sexually assault a person, that sense of safety is easily taken away from us and replaced with fear because we know these things are happening around us in our environment. When we have weak policies and there is a lack of accountability for perpetrators, then more people feel comfortable enough to go out and abuse others. Oftentimes when people hear about sexual assault prevention, they often just think of ways that they can prevent sexual violence from happening to them. And while that is great and very important, we want to be able to stop this from happening altogether. A lot of people say that it can happen, but it definitely can. If there are subtle things that we do that contribute to violence that we don't understand, then there are very subtle things that we can do to stop violence as well. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Raven Fields with Hopeful Horizons, and I hope you enjoyed this video.
Thank you, Raven. I know she's on the call tonight, but thank you for those tips. Another question that often comes up when talking about sexual violence is how to put a stop to it. With tips on men's roles in helping to educate and prevent sexual assault, here is Hopeful Horizons violence prevention specialist Ray Gochea.
Thank you, Rose. And thank you for everyone else that attended here and were willing to speak out against sexual violence and against abuse. How simple is it to teach the youth about stranger danger? How easy is it to talk with a young person about not using drugs or alcohol while underage? Or how much easier is it to talk with them to use alcohol responsibly when they are of age? The level of uncomfortability undeniably increases when in discussion with the subject of sex. We cannot pretend it to be a taboo discussion, as a simple Google search will show today's social media applications like TikTok and music in the mainstream will display hypersexuality in both the lyrics and videos that are displayed. Now, this is where the conversation can simply end if it came down to leaving it to the parents for guidance with applying restrictions in their children's phones and technology usage, though realistically speaking, that doesn't ever seem to be the case with every parent. So other kids with the lack of parental guidance will look to their closest friends for direction on what it means to be a man. I myself, at an early age, unfortunately didn't grow to learn about manhood and the conversations about flying mammals and insects with my dad being forced to leave the country at an early age. So at 15 years old, I looked to my friends and was taught about how to treat a girl, learning what girls like, the lessons I learned from the same men that may just have been taught all the wrong, presumptuous ways as well. And I myself had plenty expectations of girls and made assumptions of what a girl would want without needing to use consent over and over again. I gratefully haven't crossed serious boundaries, but I can only imagine the many other boys that are looking towards their peers as well as may have possibly traversed towards that regrettable line of sexual assault under the influence or not, and shared their accomplishments amongst each other. My mom loved me so much and cared for me so much by playing both roles as a caretaker and a provider, though she couldn't just get conversationally involved with me when it came to the discussion of women. And I don't blame her. I wasn't willing to listen at that point. I needed a male figure in my life to not just guide me so that I may grow into the man that I should be, but to identify with me when I have obstacles and challenges, for me to have a better understanding of my sexual interactions. Those discussions needed to happen about the same time when I learned not to talk to strangers in elementary school, of not to use drugs in middle school, and not to drink underage in high school, but as well as the lessons of consensual language and the descriptions of continuum of harm, of how sexual harassment leads into sexual assault. Those lessons were never taught to me in its entirety until I finally reached the average age of when my prefrontal cortex was fully developed, 25 years old, through this organization, gratefully. I started to truly learn about all these things in my childhood that I wish I could have learned well into my adulthood. Imagine how much we can prevent, not only for parents at homes, but community members at school, any degrees of sexual violence, being willing to hold these discussions with each other. By just simply addressing it at an early age, we can develop a safe space for young boys to talk with in the smallest ways. It will begin to make the world of a difference. I can tell you with the programs like the Men of Strength program that I've held throughout the past few years within the middle schools and high schools, those boys, it has made such a big difference. Just based on the experiences of them sharing with me, the experiences of change that they shared with me. It does start with us. Because as a man myself, I needed to be willing to educate the next growing man how they themselves can not only prevent abuse in their lives and the lives of their peers, the people close to them, the people around them, but to provide an ear to listen to when a man or a boy needs to be heard. Call out abusive behaviors, care for your fellow man, and create that safe space so that we can begin to build that continuum of help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Those are great tips. Now I'd like to introduce Kristen Dubrowski, Hopeful Horizons Chief Executive Officer, who has spent the last 22 years of her career providing services to survivors.
Thank you so much, Rose. And Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. All the speakers have been amazing and inspiring, and I thought I would really like being at the end of the program, but now I realize everyone's already said all of the good things. And so I'm just here to punctuate everything else everyone has already said. And, you know, hopefully next year we'll be able to be together again in person, but for this year, I think this is working out really well. So it's great to have everyone together virtually. So yeah, over the past 22 years working in the victim service field, I have seen a lot of positive changes, and I've been in this community for 17 years. Some of the changes I've seen is, you know, we're talking about rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment more openly, in part thanks, you know, in part to movements like Me Too and Time's Up. And we're talking about the importance of men's roles in ending violence against women. And that is huge. And the work that our prevention team is doing in middle and high schools is just amazing. We've learned that victims are traumatized and that trauma causes a variety of responses, and that trauma can have a lasting impact. And we've also learned that the impact of trauma can be mitigated. And we have evidence-based treatments like those offered at Hopeful Horizons to help with the healing process. However, we still have a long way to go. As we've heard tonight, we still hold victims responsible for the actions of those who perpetrate assault by continuing to ask victims what they did or didn't do, or what they wore, or where they were. We continue to only see some victims as credible, victims who don't fit our expectations of a good victim, victims who don't come forward immediately after an assault, and victims who are married to the person who assaults them are still less likely to be believed. We still haven't figured out how to address the fact that Black women are at a disproportionately high risk of sexual violence, as are transgender people, people who have disabilities, and those in other marginalized groups. Because of these and many other factors, rape and sexual assault continue to be the most underreported crimes. And Sheriff Tanner spoke to this a little bit too, you know, and we've seen what he's seen in his reports, that during the pandemic, we've seen fewer victims of sexual assault reaching out for help, even though we know the rates of sexual violence typically escalate during states of emergency. In order for reporting rates to change, in order for survivors to come forward and seek help, we must work together to build a community intolerant of sexual violence. And that's what we're all here for tonight. That's what we're all talking about tonight. That's the chorus we're singing tonight, right? We're all in this together. We all have a role to play in ending sexual violence, and it starts with hearing and believing survivors. Whether a victim reaches out to a friend, a parent, law enforcement, school personnel, a medical provider, clergy, their employer, or Hopeful Horizons, they should be able to expect support and not blame. They should hear the words, "It's not your fault," and "I'm sorry this happened to you," and "How can I help you?" They should be given resources like Hopeful Horizons 24-hour support line or our anonymous chat support group. As professionals, coworkers, and loved ones, we need to recognize that survivors deserve to define what justice and healing look like for them, and it's our role to help them on that journey. So Hopeful Horizons is here for you, all of you. Thank you all so much. Let's take back the night.
Thank you, Kristen. I want to wrap up tonight by thanking the survivors and those of you who showed up to support them. Thank you for believing survivors. Thank you for speaking out and speaking up when you see something or hear something. Thank you all for encouraging victims to get help. If you or anyone you know has been the victim of violence or abuse, please encourage them to call Hopeful Horizons on our 24-hour support line. The number is above my head. It's 843-770-4666. 1070. 843-770-1070. And thank you all for sharing your stories. Thank you all for speaking out. And thank you all for showing your support for survivors, most importantly. Thank you.